we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Alors,
order.
Statements by members. Déclaration des députés. L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Everyone showed up at COP23, Mr. Speaker, putting on their best face. Everyone was a leader in the fight against climate change. Everyone promised to do more. Canada even launched an international coalition against coal power. And then everyone went home. And there, the government realized that putting an end to coal power, okay, that's one thing, but, we'll keep selling to the United States. And then the Minister of the Environment hailed the decision to go ahead with Keystone XL the very same week when 800,000 liters of oil leaked from the pipeline. And also the Premier of Alberta, who's calling for more aid from Ottawa to build yet again new pipelines. The same person that the NDP leader says who is very close to his values. The Liberals are promising beautiful strategies, just like the Harper government, who used to miss UN meetings to go to Tim Hortons. Climate change does not depend on Canada.
Mr. Speaker, last May, Mississauga got a new poet laureate. Wally Shaw, a 22-year-old UTM student, has a remarkable story. He arrived in Canada with his family from Pakistan when he was 3 years old. He had a turbulent teen years. When he was 15, he faced assault charges and jail time. But because of his mother and teachers, he turned his life around. Today, he is a TEDx speaker and an eloquent voice on mental health issues and anti-bullying. In 2013, Wally released his first hip-hop album entitled Rhythm and Poetry. In 2014, he was named to Canada's Top 20 Under 20. Today, his words inspire, motivate, and help thousands. Congratulations, Wally, on your awesome appointment. This is an appropriate time to quote Wally's words back to him. Seize the day, make it your moment, you're the king of the castle.
Honourable Member for Haliburton, Fort Lakes, Brock.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak to a matter of deep concern for the tens of thousands of families who each year experience the most horrific of circumstances, that of finding a loved one missing. Anyone who has experienced the tragic loss of a family member or close friend will tell you that closure is an important part of the healing process. But for so many Canadian families with missing loved ones, this process cannot even begin. Canada has many national days of observance, but we do not have a National Missing Persons Day. The latest RCMP numbers suggest approximately 71,000 people went missing in 2015 alone. At the request of the Boyle sisters from Scarborough, Ontario, whose brother Jay went missing in 1995 at the age of 17, I was honoured to sponsor a petition calling on the Government of Canada to enact a National Day of Solidarity, of Remembrance, a day for action to prevent these tragedies from happening to another family. I urge all Canadians to support the petition for a National Missing Persons Day, which can be found at petitions.ourcommons.ca.
The Honourable Member for St. Catharines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I was pleased to join Principal Gretzinger and the students and staff of Oak Ridge Public School to plant an English oak sapling. However, this was no ordinary oak sapling. As Kaylee Germain, an Oak Ridge student, noted, the Battle of Vimy Ridge was a significant moment in our collective history, a defining moment for Canada. 100 years ago, that battle left Vimy Ridge a barren wasteland. One of the many oaks that once stood tall, only one remained. Lieutenant Leslie Miller of the Canadian Expeditionary Force found the acorns from the remaining tree and brought them home to Canada. The sapling we planted in St. Catharines is a direct descendant of that remaining oak. It was my pleasure to personally donate one of the remaining saplings to Oak Ridge. Its location holds personal significance for me, as my son Ethan will one day attend Oak Ridge Public School. My hope is that this tree grows tall and serves as a monument to the students of Oak Ridge and the residents of St. Catharines to remind them of the tremendous sacrifice, given by so many in service to St. Catharines and to Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député d'Outre.
Honourable member for Outremont.
Fueled by anti-Muslim hatred have exploded into an Islamophobic government-led pogrom against the Rohingya in Myanmar. I had occasion to meet with Special Envoy Bob Rae during the recent Commonwealth Parliamentary Assizes in neighbouring Bangladesh. His remarks were chilling. The Canadian delegation there played a major role in getting the CPA to take the uncharacteristic step of adopting a strongly worded statement on the Rohingya, one that referred to genocide.
After World War II, when the scope of the Holocaust was learned, the world resolved to never forget, and that hatred would never again degenerate into mass state-sponsored murder.
On the very day when the butcher of the Balkans has been sentenced to life in prison for genocide, Canada must do everything we can to ensure that the butchers of Burma suffer a similar fate.
Yeah. Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Surrey Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to commemorate two inspiring residents of my riding who recently passed away. First, I'd like to commemorate Suki Tin, who passed away unexpectedly on September 8th. Suki was a political activist for the Professor Mohan Singh Foundation. She fought long and hard to bring recognition to the victims of the Kamagata Maru incident, including an official apology from the Government of Canada. In doing so, she performed a great service to the South Asian community and Canadians as a whole. Surrey Centre also lost Doug Nickerson, the guardian angel of the Surrey Strip. Little Doug, as he was known to his friends, protected some of the most vulnerable people in our society by racing around 135A Street on his bicycle, administering naloxone to those overdosing on opioids. In total, Little Doug saved an incredible 148 lives. People like Suki Tin and Doug Nickerson make Surrey a better place to call home. Thank you.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I visited a telecommunication firm in Markham. The name of the company is CIK Telecom. CIK stands for Customer is a King. They're a small telecommunication provider. CIK Telecom is the story of a Canadian dream. In 2003, Mr. Deng and Mr. Jen started CIK in their basement. Today, they have grown to over 400 employees and just recently celebrated their 14th anniversary. Without the efforts of entrepreneurs like Mr. Deng and Mr. Jen, Canada would not be what it is today. I am glad to see that competitive company with 5-star services and 2-star pricing was able to be successful. While the finance minister accuses small business owners of being tax cheat, we in the Conservative caucus will continue to stand up for small business owners and the people who work for them. I'm proud to have growing businesses in my riding that are creating jobs and prosperity. Thank you.
The honourable member for Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am proud today to rise to pay tribute to the 150 extraordinary Labradorians that were honoured this past week across Labrador. In celebration of Canada 150, I launched a Labradorians of Distinction Award as a way to acknowledge the contributions of Labradorians to their communities. Through an independent process, Labradorians were nominated and selected. 150 incredible people, both living and deceased, were honoured for their contributions to our culture, history, economy, and environment. Mr. Speaker, a diverse culture of Indigenous and settlers from around the world make up Labrador. And when I think of these people who have molded our great home, I see only the faces of hard-working, resilient, creative, and genuine people. Mr. Speaker, people who walked the land in moccasins to those who came in uniform to serve, from those who sailed the Labrador Sea to those who dug the first iron ore, and from those who harpooned their food from the ice to those who opened their first modern facilities.
L'honorable député de Vimy.
Honourable member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, It is an honor for me to rise today on this 74th anniversary of the independence of Lebanon.
To rise in this chamber and bring attention to the proud people of Lebanon who celebrate the independence on the 22nd of November. This is a day defined by happiness, autonomy, and progress of a people whose history goes back thousands of years. Même si la tension monte.
Even though tensions are rising, the people stay strong. Like the phoenix rising from its ashes, Lebanon has seen political turbulence for decades, but the people stay strong. On November 22nd, 2017, I hope you will join me to wish everyone in Lebanon a happy Independence Day and a rapid return to peace and prosperity.
عشتم عاشت كندا وعاش لبنان. Thank you.
The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Mr. Speaker, today marks the 74th anniversary of the independence of Lebanon. Lebanese people are multi-talented with many achievements that should be proud of. Today, as we celebrate 74 years of independence, my message to all Canadians of Lebanese origins is to celebrate your love for Canada as much as you celebrate your love for Lebanon. Celebrate your entrepreneurial spirit as your ability to contribute to the diversity that we enjoy in the country, welcoming people to practice their religions and beliefs free of persecution, and celebrate our flourishing democracy as all countries should be independent of interference from regional involvement. Mr. Speaker, I invite all members to join the Canada-Lebanon Parliamentary Friendship Group this evening for a celebration of Lebanon independence at the Sir John A. Macdonald Building. Thank you.
Honourable Member for La Valise-Île. Mr. Speaker, today, the 74th anniversary of Lebanon, I would like to wish all Lebanese across the world, and especially Lebanese Canadians, a very happy national holiday.
The largest Arab Canadian community is making a remarkable and growing contribution to Canadians' heritage. The Lebanese, most of whom have chosen the province of Quebec as their own home, are not only bilingual, they are also a diverse group comprising 18 religious denominations. They are active in politics, science, medicine, and music and economy. Through this diversity, the Lebanese community reinforces the fundamental values of the Charter of Canada. Je souhaite que le Liban trouve les...
I wish for all Lebanese that Lebanon will find the best solutions to maintain peace within its borders. Once again, to all Lebanese and Canadians, a very happy national holiday.
Honourable member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, it is my honor today to welcome to Canada the President of the Republic of Kosovo, Hashim Thaçi. This week, accompanied by members from this House, the President laid flowers at Canada's Peacekeeping Monument to thank Canada for our contributions to bringing peace to Kosovo during and after the brutal conflict there, and for accepting thousands of refugees from Kosovo 18 years ago. Those former asylum seekers are now leaders in Canada in business, in culture, in sport, and so many areas. I had the privilege of living and working in Kosovo 10 years ago as an advisor to their parliament, and it is impressive to see how far Kosovo has come in developing pluralistic, multi-ethnic, inclusive democratic institutions, including strong gender representation and a modern professional public service. It is a country with a young, educated population, natural resources, and a progressive, outward-looking attitude. I look forward to this visit, deepening the ties of friendship between our two countries. Thank you, Philemon Derrick.
Honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Monsieur le Président, for Zimbabwe,
Mr. Speaker,
the resignation of Robert Mugabe is an excellent news. Having been born in Africa, I witnessed the winds of change blowing at independence. At independence for the people of Zimbabwe, a new era of hope and prosperity was in offing. But Mugabe's subsequent abuses of human rights and crimes turned those hopes round quickly into a dictatorial regime drowning in poverty. I met with the official opposition leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, when he visited Canada and discussed extensively our shared hopes for a democratic future for Zimbabwe. It has been a long journey, but today that hope has returned. We will support the people of Zimbabwe in the bright future ahead of them. Good luck to Zimbabwe.
Honourable member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to express my deepest condolences to the people of Nigeria following the terrible attack yesterday in Mubi, Adamawa State. Nigeria has been facing multiple threats to its peace and security in recent years. And as a United Church minister, it's appalling to me that this attack happened in a place of worship where people should feel safe. As co-chair of the Canada-Africa Parliamentary Association, I know of the important relationship between Canada and Nigeria, but this tragedy should serve to draw us even closer. Today we stand in solidarity with the people of Nigeria, especially those injured and their loved ones, and we extend our deepest condolences to the families of the victims of this heinous crime. Mr. Speaker, an injury to one is an injury to all. Today, more than ever, we must work together to support a more peaceful future, free of hatred and violence, here and around the world. Thank you.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
For decades, jurisdictional gaps have left coastal communities with nowhere to turn when they need help cleaning up abandoned vessels. Oil spills and marine debris from thousands of vessels pollute our waterways and put tourism and fishing jobs at risk. This is the 83rd time I've raised this here. 15 years of coastal community solutions are built into our legislation to fix vessel registration, to deal with the backlog, support good green jobs and recycling, to end the runaround by making Coast Guard the first responder and resourcing them. But November 9, Liberals blocked debate on my bill, an unprecedented interference. This week I'll appeal so coastal voices are heard. The government's new legislation and mine complement each other, and with the public's help, both could proceed. Please, Canadians, ask your MP to vote yes in next week's first-time historic secret ballot vote to have C-352 votable and to hear coastal community voices.
I think something big is coming up this Sunday in Ottawa, and on that note, the honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
One team will take home the Grey Cup, and it's very apparent that the Calgary Stampedos are the team that's on their way up. The Cup is contested between winners of CFL's East and West, but this year I think it's clear which team is truly the best. The Stamps know that this weekend they can win it all, and unlike the federal deficit, the Argos are sure to fall. We've got Bo Levi Mitchell, a killer quarterback, who there's absolutely no way that his mad skills will lack. And then there's the work of punter Rob Maver, who will surely keep the Stampeders on their best behavior. Coach Dave Dickinson has been called the smartest in the league, even if the Argos' Mark Tressman finds that hard to believe. So on Sunday, we will proudly sing Ye Men of Calgary. We're all looking forward to the match of the century. So giddy up, Argos. We're cheering on our Stamps, and with a great big Yahoo, they're sure to be Grey Cup champs.
Some things make it especially difficult to keep order in the House, but nice to see everybody in such a happy mood. The honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, today we recognize National Housing Day. Safe and affordable housing is central to our lives, our health, and our families. It's essential to vibrant communities and a strong middle class. Vancouverites from all walks of life face housing challenges. Our most vulnerable citizens sleep on the streets, seniors and single parents can't afford rising rents, and the next generation is giving up on home ownership or moving away. When our new government was appointed 2 years ago, my first priority was making sure that the ministers and the Prime Minister were well informed and prepared to act on housing access and affordability challenges in Vancouver and beyond. I'm proud to celebrate today's announcement of Canada's first ever national housing strategy, which comes with historic levels of investment. by listening to local residents, by partnering with housing advocates on all levels of government. We're thinking nationally and acting locally.
Hear, hear.
I have the honor to inform the House that the acting Chief Electoral Officer, the House has received from the acting Chief Electoral Officer a certificate of the election and return of Mr. Lloyd, member for the electoral district of Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to present to you Dane Lloyd, member for the electoral district of Sturgeon River Parkland, who has taken the oath, signed the roll, and now claims the right to take his seat. Monsieur le Président, j'ai l'honneur de vous présenter.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to present to you Dane Lloyd, member for the electoral district of Sturgeon River Parkland, who has taken the oath, signed the roll, and now claims the right to take his seat.
Let the member take his seat. Congratulations and welcome. All the best to you. Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister join me in condemning the egregious crackdown on free speech at Laurier University?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to creating open spaces for Canadians to debate and express their views. In a free society, we may disagree with the person's views, but we must defend their right to hold them, unless those views promote hate. Intolerance and hate have no place in Canadian society or in our post-secondary institutions. We will continue to fight to ensure the charter rights of Canadians are upheld and that every Canadian can feel safe and secure in their community.
Hear, hear. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, I don't know why the Prime Minister can't just simply denounce what happened at the university.
Mr. Speaker, hidden companies in France, shares that go up with certain decisions and legislative measures that could lead to personal gain. Those are the things that the Prime Minister is defending and protecting. The Minister of Finance still has many numbered companies. When will the Prime Minister finally demand that the Minister of Finance reveal all his holdings in all of his private companies before the next election? The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Everyone in this House by wishing you a happy birthday.
Exactly. Order. Some things do make the House very difficult to control. The Honourable Minister of Finance has the floor. But thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to repeat what I've said to this House previously. I worked with the Ethics Commissioner from day one, disclosed all of my assets to the Ethics Commissioner, and I've actually decided to go further than she recommended by selling all the shares in the company I built with my family, and in fact make a significant donation to charity. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to work on behalf of all Canadians, doing the work that we were elected to do, to make our economy better, to help middle-class Canadians, and ensure that the future is brighter than the present.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that we will not start singing "How Old Are You Now?" But maybe for a birthday present, the minister could give you the gift of an answer to one of our questions. Mr. Speaker, it's not only the Canada Revenue Agency that taxpayers can't get an answer from. A letter representing thousands of small businesses across the country has been sent to the Prime Minister asking for clarification on his unfair tax changes. The Prime Minister has created so much uncertainty and confusion. So when will the Prime Minister finally end all this confusion and just stop attacking local businesses?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to talk about what we're trying to do on behalf of all Canadians. We know that having a tax system that's fair matters to Canadians. We've put forward some measures that are going to ensure that it's just that. And what we've done to make sure that it's fair for all Canadians is then looked at how can we best help Canadians to be successful. So by taking the money that we're going to use from the changes in taxes to put it in force through indexing the Canada Child Benefit, increasing the working income tax benefit, we're going to show benefits for Canadians across this country while having a tax system that's more fair.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, every week there are new revelations on the Minister of Finance's conflicts of interest. There were his undeclared shares, then his villa in France, and then recently Bill C-27, which he set up and would benefit his own family's company, Morneau Chappelle, as well as himself. Can the Prime Minister demand that his Minister of Finance finally be more transparent and disclose all of his holdings? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I fully understand why the opposition wants to talk about this bill. Because they don't want to talk about our economy. They don't want to talk about our strategy for housing for Canada. Today is a very important day. We're going to explain to Canadians how we can improve the housing situation throughout the country. That is very important. We're going to see very significant changes this afternoon. The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the reality is that 80% of Canadian families are paying more taxes since the Liberals took power. The question that I asked of the minister was simple and entirely legitimate, especially in light of all the conflicts of interest that we've discovered about him for the last 2 years. If he has nothing to hide, can the Minister of Finance be honest and reveal once and for all his holdings, his companies, his shares, and everything he has been hiding from Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, the reality is that 9 out of 10 families is in a better situation, and the reason is that we introduced the Canada Child Benefit. That is very important. With an average of $2,300 more for every family for their situation. That is a big change. It is a good change for Canadian families. We are going to continue to work for them. The Honourable Member for the Musqueam-Neigette, Témiscouata, Les Basques.
Because while Liberals help Stephen Bronfman and other friends to use tax haven to avoid paying taxes, Canadians can speak to anyone when they call the CRA to help, to get help in paying taxes. While the Finance Minister gets a free pass from the Prime Minister, despite the fact that he had interest in a company that he was in charge of regulating, hundreds of thousands of public servants are paying the price for this government's incompetence in the Phoenix fiasco. Liberals usually waited at least one full term before demonstrating a sense of entitlement. Why are they in such a rush now?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, since the Auditor General's report, I have to say that I agree with all his recommendations. Services to Canadians are at the heart of my mandate letter. From the very first budget, we invested $50 million in call centers for the agency. We've already started hiring more officers, or agents rather, to answer more Canadians. We have an action plan that targets modernization of the phone system, improvement for training, as well as updating service standards. Our investments are always intended to improve the quality of services that Canadians are entitled to expect. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-Lapis-Patrie. And then there's the matter of Phoenix. Governing is about making choices. Look at the Liberals' choices. You are a couple without children, you get nothing. You earn less than $45,000, you have nothing. People who take the bus, no more tax credit. On the other hand, if you send your money to the Cayman Islands, no problem. You table a bill that could make you rich, I will write you a check. You want to see the Prime Minister, that'll be $1,500. Netflix, no taxes. You're a client of KPMG, we'll make you a deal. When will the Liberals stop working for their millionaire friends on Bay Street? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government has been fighting tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. It is a priority and has invested nearly $1 billion in order to fight tax evasion. We are continuing to work for Canadians. That is a priority, and we're going to continue to insist on that. And we're not going to circulate misinformation to the public, unlike my colleagues on the other side. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-Lapis-Patrie. Yes, the Liberals are going to continue to sign off on tax havens. It's funny, when the government wants something done, for example, an infrastructure privatization bank, it's all set up legalizing cannabis, the bulldozer's coming through. But when it comes to helping families pay their rent, it'll have to wait until after the next election. Paying employees in the public service, can't do it, it's too complicated. To answer the phone, forget about that, stay on hold. I'd like to call out the Minister of Finance and ask him when he is going to leave his ivory tower and start working for real people. The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I've already said that we agree with all of the Auditor General's recommendations. I want to inform everyone on the other side that the previous Conservative government chose to cut services that were offered to Canadians by cutting funding to call centres. Under the former minister, they reduced the number of agents in call centres, cut service hours and service standards. Rather than cutting services, we have chosen to reinvest, Mr. Speaker. I continue to work to ensure that the agency treats Canadians not like simple citizens, but as important people. The Honourable Member for Témiscouata, for Rimouski-Neigette, Basque. The Liberals blame the Conservatives blame the Liberals. Their own Minister of Finance is currently under investigation for having presented a bill that could have made him and many of his colleagues to get wealthier.
Bonus, he doesn't think there is anything wrong in holding assets in a company that he is in charge of regulating. Liberals promised higher ethical standards. Why can't they even enforce the bare minimum?
They don't know what ethics are.
The Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we are seeing both parties in the opposition continuing to focus on me, and we understand why. What's hard to understand with the opposition member that just spoke is why he's not interested in talking about housing on a day when we are talking about historic changes in housing. We talked in Budget 2017 about $11.2 billion spent on a national housing strategy. Today we're unveiling how we will make a huge difference for families across this country. It's an important day for Canadian families. It's an important day for housing.
The Honourable Member for Milton.
So the interesting part about making promises, Mr. Speaker, like the Minister was just making, is that you have to be trusted to deliver on them. And that's what we're talking about today. The Prime Minister set out his new mandate tracker last week, and he actually reiterated the directives. And the quote from the Finance Ministers is, "As Minister, you must ensure that you are aware of and fully compliant with the Conflict of Interest Act." Now, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance has already been fined for not being in compliance with the Ethics Act. I'm wondering, Mr. Speaker, given that he was found not to be in compliance, what is the Prime Minister going to do to ensure his directive is enforced?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, again, the opposition in this case is likely focusing on personal attacks because they don't want us to focus on what they didn't do in housing for the last decade. What we're going to announce today is how we are going to help 500,000 Canadians to have more money in their pocket for housing or a key to a house. We're going to talk about how we're going to reduce homelessness by 50%. Mr. Speaker, we are taking an historic role that hasn't been taken for 50 years in housing, making a huge difference for Canadian families. Important work, an important job that's getting done today.
Honourable member from Milton.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, my issue with the minister's question is this, is that every time he hears the fact that he broke the compliance standards, he assumes it's a personal attack, and it's not. We're just asking him to be accountable for his actions. Uphold the highest standards of honesty and impartiality, both in the performance of your official duties and in the arrangement of your private affairs. Mr. Speaker, has anyone able to trust the minister when we know in his personal affairs he's broken it?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said, I've continued to say that I have followed all the rules. What I want to do is make sure that Canadians know that while the opposition is focusing...
Order. The time for members to respond to what they hear is when they have the floor and not at other times. The Honourable Minister of Finance has the floor.
While the opposition wants to focus on me, we want to focus on Canadians, and that's the work that we're doing today. By talking about how the historic change, the federal government taking a role that hasn't been taken for 50 years in housing, distributing a huge amount of help to 500,000 families, allowing them to have more money in their pocket for housing, a key to a house. This is the sort of work that we're setting out to do on behalf of Canadians, and we'll keep doing it while they keep focused on personal attack.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, it's historic. Never in the history of Canada has the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister been under investigation at the same time by the Ethics Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, the problem with the Minister of Finance is that he is playing hide-and-seek. He tabled Bill C-27, which led to significant benefit to his family's business. I believe that he consulted her after he tabled that. That is unacceptable. Why is the Minister of Finance playing hide-and-seek with Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, there's a reason that the opposition wants to talk about me. It's because they don't want to talk about Canadians. We will continue to work on the situation for Canadians. Today, we're presenting our housing strategy, which is very important to Canadians. We're going to help 500,000 Canadians to get a house or other types of housing. That is very important. We're going to improve the situation of people who need help. This is an important day for Canadians. The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we're going to talk about the Minister of Finance. This same minister said he was going to disclose, or rather put his assets into trust. The same minister tabled a bill that leads to a direct conflict of interest for his family's business. He consulted the Ethics Commissioner afterwards, and now the Minister of Finance still has private numbered companies. Why does the minister not answer Canadians' question and disclose all of his assets to allow Canadians to decide and judge for themselves? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will continue doing the important work that Canadians expect of me while the opposition continues to talk about me. It's important to continue to improve our economy. We are in a very good situation. After 2 years, we've seen significant economic growth, better than their track record. That is very important. We have 500,000 new jobs. That is very important. We have the lowest unemployment rate for 10 years. I will focus on growth. We will continue our work.
Mr. Speaker, we know that the Finance Minister has already been found guilty of breaking the Conflict of Interest Act. That is clear. What's not clear, maybe as clear as mud, is how many other conflicts of interest he is in. So the Finance Minister, and yes, the Finance Minister, has a choice to make. He can continue to keep Canadians in the dark, or he can reveal
what assets he's owned in number of companies over the last 2 years. Or what exactly is the finance minister trying to hide? And yes, we're focused on the finance minister.
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as often as the opposition focuses on personal attacks, we are going to focus on what we're doing for Canadians. That we know is important. Today, as we've said, is a particularly important day. We're talking about Budget 2017's $11.2 billion invested in housing, how that's going to make a difference for Canadians. What the Prime Minister is going to be talking about today is how 500,000 people are going to have access to housing. That's critically important. How we're going to reduce homelessness by 50% in this country. These are important goals. We know Canadians are waiting to hear. We're looking forward to telling them more this afternoon.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
As leaders in this country, we all are called to a higher standard, and that includes being held accountable for our actions. That is not anybody picking on us or anybody picking on the Minister of Finance. It is him being accountable for his actions. And it's shameful to see him refusing to do that. Now, the Prime Minister talks about sunny ways. He talks about sunshine being the best disinfectant. Let's give the finance minister a chance to be accountable and reveal to Canadians, instead of keeping them in the dark, what assets he's held, be accountable for his actions, own up, stand up, and take some leadership.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I am accountable, and I will continue to be accountable to Canadians. While the opposition focuses on fabrications, I will focus on being accountable for results for Canadians. What we are doing, Mr. Speaker, is we are focused on making sure the economy grows. We're focused on making sure that it helps Canadian families. Both of those two things are demonstrably having an impact. With the highest level of growth we've seen in years, significantly higher than we saw in the previous government, and importantly, a lower level of employment that we've seen in a decade. Important goals, we're accountable for that.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, this government committed to implementing a poverty reduction strategy. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has a report that demonstrates that the government's fight against poverty is missing the mark. Not only has there not been any analysis done to determine if existing measures are working and how they work, even worse, many measures are badly targeted. If this government really cares about fighting poverty, what is it waiting for to implement a real coordinated strategy to fight poverty? Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, that's a very important question. We have started from the beginning with a strategy to improve the situation of people who are living in poverty in our country. We've worked on the Guaranteed Income Supplement. We're helping seniors to have more money. We have introduced the Canada Child Benefit. That means that this year, 300,000 children will no longer be living in poverty. And today, with our housing strategy, we are going to help many people have something in order to live. This is important. It's a continuation of our strategy to improve the situation. The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals have a bad habit of imposing their vision on provinces and municipalities. We saw it with the legalization of cannabis and health accords. Everything points to the same thing happening with their housing strategy. 1.7 million Canadian families have housing problems. Will the government establish a real partnership with provinces and municipalities to adapt their strategy to local realities? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important day to improve the housing situation in our country. We will continue to work with provinces and municipalities. But today, we are going to announce how we can improve the situation now with $11.2 million, which was in the 2017 budget. We're going to explain how we can ensure more housing for 500,000 Canadians, how we can improve the situation for 50% of people who do not have housing now. That is an important strategy, and today is an important day.
Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister keeps repeating that he disclosed all his assets since day one. Well, we're not fabricating the fact that he hid his offshore corporation for 2 years. Prime Minister says the minister has always worked since day one with the Ethics Commissioner to ensure his personal finances were in line with the expectations that Canadians have. Well, we're not fabricating the fact that he never got the Commissioner's permission to introduce C-27, a bill he and his family would profit from. Mr. Speaker, the minister still has mystery assets. Why won't he tell Canadians what's inside all of his other companies?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this is a fabrication of an issue. That's all I can say. Because being clear on my assets was important from day one. That is what allows me to continue.
Order. I would ask the Honourable Member for Beauport, Charlevoix, to not, and the others around the member, to allow the Honourable Minister of Finance to have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, by being free of conflicts from day one, we've been focused on the things that we are working for on behalf of Canadians. And that is having a real impact. The kind of impact that Canadian families can see. They can see it with more money in their pockets because of the Canada Child Benefit. They can see it if they're a senior with the improvement of the Guaranteed Income Supplement. And what we can see is all those actions are leading to a much better economy that's helping all of our constituents and all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, you know what, Mr. Speaker, is not a fabrication is the erosion of trust that Canadians are having in this finance minister. And it's not just about what's hiding behind door number 2, door number 3, or door number 4. What about Morneau Chappelle stock held by family members? How much has he and his family profited from decisions made by this finance minister? Since the minister was sworn in, shares in Morneau Chappelle have skyrocketed by 38%. Simple question, Mr. Speaker. Do Canadians have the right to know if the minister's financial interests and that of his family conflict with his public duties? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as I've reported to this House, I have no interest, nor does my family, in Morneau Chappelle. What we do is we work here on this side of the House to improve the situation of Canadians. And what we can say, Mr. Speaker, is it's going well. Canadians are doing well. The economy has improved. There is more work to do. We are talking today about the work that we're going to do in housing to help 500,000 Canadians to have a key to their house or more money in their pocket to ensure that they have housing, to help make sure that we have 50% fewer people who actually don't have a place to live. This is the sort of work we're going to continue to do on behalf of Canadians.
For Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, for 2 years, the Minister of Finance hid his Morneau Chappelle shares in a numbered company, and we only found out about that because he got caught. He said he was working with the Ethics Commissioner from the beginning, but we know that's not true. He's been caught again, and he's under investigation yet again, and Canadians don't know what else he's hiding. The Prime Minister has said that sunshine is the best disinfectant. So will the Finance Minister let the sunshine in, face it with a grin, open up his books and let Canadians in on what else he's hiding?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, to repeat, 100% of my assets have been disclosed from day one to the Ethics Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, what I can say is the opposition, focusing on personal tax, does not want to focus on the last decade in which they did nothing in housing. What we're talking about today is how we're going to make a huge difference in housing. The $11.2 billion that we set in Budget 2017 is going to make a significant long-term difference for Canadians. 500,000 people with a key to their own home or money to actually pay for their lodging. This is huge. We're going to reduce homelessness in this country by 50%. Mr. Speaker, we are on the job for Canadians, and we won't be distracted.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, at least on this side of the House, we can remember the homes that we own. For 2 years, the Finance Minister profited from his ownership in a company that made millions after he introduced legislation that benefited that same company. There was no blind trust. There was no sign-off from the Ethics Commissioner, and we only knew about his continued ownership with Morneau Chappelle because he got caught, and now he's under investigation yet again. Canadians want to know what other skeletons this minister is hiding in his closet, so when will he finally come clean, reveal what else he's hiding so Canadians can see what his other conflicts of interest are?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I do understand why the members opposite want to focus on me. They don't want to focus on what's going on for Canadians. They don't want to consider how well our economy is doing, because of course it paints a very different portrait than what happened over the last decade. What we're seeing is the work we're doing, investing in Canadians, it pays off. Canadians are doing better. Families are doing better. We're seeing a huge benefit in Canadian families. More money in their pockets means our economy is doing better. We will continue to focus on improving Canadians' lives because we know, Mr. Speaker, that focusing on Canadians works.
Alors.
Order. The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General's report is a devastating blow to the current Minister of National Revenue, not the one from 2 years ago. She's proven again that she is incompetent in managing important files within her agency. Her mandate letter says that she should make the CRA a customer-focused agency. Well, I think they've kind of missed the mark. On the government's new propaganda website, the minister lists her mandate goals under the category of ongoing commitments, which in other words means who cares. Maybe she should create a new category called "We've put an end to this commitment, and now it's registered as an abject failure." So what mark would the minister give her for her performance? F or worse? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, we already have an action plan to improve the quality of services that the agency provides to Canadians. Starting in 2018-19, there will be a new telephone platform which will allow us to answer more calls and to estimate the waiting time and avoid having Canadians put on hold. This plan also plans for the improvement of training in call centres and creating a national quality control team. Furthermore, the agency is updating its service standards to better meet the needs of its clients. These are all concrete steps that will allow us to improve services to Canadians and which meet the concerns of the Auditor General.
Skeena Bulkley Valley.
The Revenue Minister's list of greatest misses is truly impressive. First, she wanted to tax employee discounts. Then she started rejecting Canadians who had been granted a disability tax credit. Now we learn from the Auditor General that her department doesn't just reject half the calls that it receives. Of those that actually make it through, 30% of Canadians get the wrong information. So if the minister wants to win back just a little bit of credibility, will she make this promise today that no Canadian will face a fine or penalty if they follow the bad advice of her agency?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, if you'll allow me, I would say that we are working very hard on this and have been for the last 2 years. I agree with all of the Auditor General's recommendations, Mr. Speaker. The former Conservative government chose to cut the services available to Canadians by decreasing funding to call centres. This was done under the former Minister of National Revenue, Ms. Finlay. They reduced the number of staffers.
Alors, je dois
Order. I should mention I should remind the minister that we can't name people by their names, only by their writing name.
Excusez-moi, apparemment c'est
Excuse me, apparently it's someone else. So the Minister of National Revenue has a few seconds left. Sorry about that. Mr. Speaker, under the former Minister Finlay, they reduced the number of officers and centres, they reduced operating hours, and they even lowered service standards, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with the opening of the Nuvik to Tuktoyaktuk Road and the commemoration of the Alaska Highway, growth and the potential of the North has never been higher. Infrastructure investments mean growth of industry at a time when our communities are expanding and diversifying. Fueling this growth are clean technology projects in energy, mining, and forestry sectors. By helping reduce greenhouse gases and improve environmental incomes, we've committed to smart, sustainable management of our natural resources. Can the Minister update this House on the importance of the Clean Growth Program and promoting clean technologies?
Excellent question. Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Yukon for his boundless optimism and his dedication advancing sustainable development in our northern communities. Canada's clean growth economy starts with a sustainable and competitive resources sector. That's why this week we launched our new $155 million Clean Growth Program to fund clean technology projects in the forestry, mining, and energy sectors helping to reduce emissions and improve environmental outcomes. Our smart investments make our country a global leader in the transition to a low-carbon economy and a cleaner future.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, our government had promised strict measures, like in Australia, to prevent jihadists from returning to Canada. Canadian safety, for us, is our #1 priority. Yesterday, the Minister refused to give us information about these traitors because he said he didn't want to disclose operational secrets. Do you really think that a general question would compromise operations? Simple question. Are these murderers being monitored 24/7? Yes or no?
Public safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad to have the honourable member's opinion, but I'm even more glad to have the RCMP and CSIS and CBSA among the best security, intelligence and law enforcement expertise in the world. Their work is highly respected and highly sought after, including in the international coalition against Daesh in Syria and Iraq. They are charged with identifying and stopping all terror threats of all kinds against Canada and Canadians, and they do that job as well or better than anyone else in the world.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the Minister is talking about the CSIS report. I have a report in which the last paragraph says that these people are coming back to countries like Canada and waiting for orders to carry out an attack. Now, we're treating them like they're little children who need to be taken care of. But what we want to know is, are these people being monitored 24/7 before something happens and it's too late?
Public safety. Speaker, the honourable gentleman can be absolutely assured that our forces are doing exactly the job they need to do. Approximately 60 terror travellers returned to Canada under the previous Conservative government. Not a single one of them was charged by the previous Conservative government. In fact, the previous Conservative government cut $1 billion from the security services of Canadians.
Order. 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 The Honourable... Yeah, birthday present could be a little order. That'd be nice. The Honourable Member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Radicalized ISIS terrorists are returning to Canada right now under this government. And this government has admitted that they don't have any capacity to monitor or assess the risk to our national security or public safety. Many Canadians are asking why this government isn't following the lead of our allies in refusing entry or more. Instead, they are throwing out the welcome mat. Canada cannot and must not become a safe haven for terrorists. Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, how many terrorists who have already returned to Canada under their watch are under 24-hour surveillance?
Good question, Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the innuendo and the insinuation in the honourable member's question is simply completely false. We have in this country the RCMP, CSIS, CBSA, other security services that do a superlative job, and anyone that needs to be under surveillance is indeed under surveillance.
Order. Order. Allah.
Order.
Kirk, Interlake, Eastman.
And of course, Mr. Speaker, the Public Safety Minister has taken away the powers from all those police agencies. Mr. Speaker, 2 Canadians travel to Iraq. One goes to fight ISIS with the Canadian Armed Forces. The others decide to join the death cult as a terrorist. Both come back to Canada. The Canadian soldier is injured while serving our country, and the Liberals cut his pay. The ISIS terrorist, on the other hand, also comes back to Canada, but is offered taxpayer-funded reintegration training by the Liberals. Why is the Prime Minister cutting the pay for our injured troops while funding support services for ISIS terrorists?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, the only cutting of the Canadian Armed Forces that was done was the previous government by billions of dollars. Mr. Speaker. We're investing in our people, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, in chapter number 1, we're looking after people, increasing their pay, increasing their benefits, Mr. Speaker, and more importantly, any deployed personnel on an international named operation will be tax-free. We're going to be making sure that we look after our force. Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see about that, Mr. Speaker. We're making sure that we're going to be looking after our Canadian Armed Forces members.
Order. The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
There's more bad news on the inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women. Following its interim report, which blamed Liberal interference for slow progress of the inquiry, there have been 8 resignations and firings. The Prime Minister said he would review the report and pay attention to its recommendations, but nothing's changed. The Liberals have broken their promise to families that they would do everything in their power to help this vital inquiry succeed. When will they finally put words into action and bring this national tragedy to an end?
Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to ending this ongoing national tragedy and to ensure that the Commission has all the support it needs to succeed. We have heard and take very seriously the concerns raised about how existing government policy and processes were impeding their work. A working group has been created to provide effective back-office support to the Commission to ensure it is able to do its work effectively. Our government remains fully committed to ensuring that families get the answers they have been waiting for.
The honourable member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
We keep getting told in this chamber that nothing's changed and people are still eligible for their disability tax credit. Yet, we receive calls every day at our constituency offices about new rules that are rendering people living with type 1 diabetes, autism, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and developmental disorders ineligible for the disability tax credit despite having been receiving it for years. So families are desperate for help. When will this government stop making excuses and fix this?
The
Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, no changes have been made to the eligibility criteria for the disability tax credit or for people with diabetes. For 10 years, the former Conservative government cut scientific research. Last year, our government invested $41 million in research into diabetes, $5 billion to ensure mental health support for over 500,000 Canadian youth under the age of 25, and we are making this more accessible. We've simplified the forms. We are allowing nurses to fill out forms if there is no doctor.
Rocky Ridge.
Well, Mr. Speaker, getting through to a real person at the CRA is notoriously difficult, unless, of course, you're a personal friend and fundraiser of the Prime Minister. In that case, he just picks up the phone for you. The Auditor General reports that 64% of calls were blocked given the busy signal or told to call back and disconnected. The government's raising taxes on diabetics, small business and middle-class families, and they won't even pick up the phone to answer questions. Why does this government only answer questions for wealthy Liberal insiders and hangs up on everyone else?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, we have an action plan to improve the quality of services that the agency offers to Canadians. I can tell you that we certainly won't be taking lessons from the Conservatives. They chose to cut funding to call centres year after year. While the number of calls was increasing, they reduced the number of staff, reduced operating hours, reduced service standards. Rather than making cuts, we have chosen to invest, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to take concrete steps to meet Canadians' needs and answer them with the best service possible.
De Beauce.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance is unfairly increasing the tax burden on Canadian entrepreneurs. But the Minister of Finance is telling our disappointed business owners, so just call me. But we learned in the Auditor General's report that over 29 million Canadian business owners haven't gotten a response. That's nearly half of people calling the minister, Mr. Speaker. So my question is simple for the Minister of Finance. When will he pick up the phone and answer the calls of concerned business owners? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, I agree with all of the recommendations of the Auditor General. The former Conservative government chose to cut services, to cut staff, to cut the assessment of quality control. This was done under the former Minister of National Revenue, Ms. Finlay. Rather than making these cuts, we've chosen to reinvest $50 million over the next 4 years. We're taking concrete steps, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that Canadians have the service that they should expect.
Member for
Mr. Speaker, in July, our American friends released detailed documents on their NAFTA priorities, including considerable detail on rules of origin for auto and other goods. They updated this document, Mr. Speaker, just a few days ago. In August, Canada didn't really release a detailed plan, but the minister gave a speech with considerable detail on the War of 1812. Today, Scotiabank is predicting the failure of NAFTA. When will this minister step away from the dinner parties and her progressive talking points and start fighting for the 2 million jobs that rely on NAFTA?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, let me assure the member opposite and all Canadians that at the NAFTA negotiating table, we are fighting very hard and in a very smart, fact-based way for the Canadian national interest. We made good progress on some of the technical chapters in the Mexico round, but I must tell you, Mr. Speaker, significant differences remain on some of the key issues, such as rules of origin and Chapter 19. And I want to say to Canadians, we will always stand for the national interest.
Honourable Member for Hamilton West and Castor Dundas.
Mr. Speaker, our government is making unprecedented investments in infrastructure, $186 billion over 12 years. And we know that these investments are essential, and we also know that we have to be innovative. I'd like to put the question to the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities to update this House on the progress of the Canada Infrastructure Bank and its leadership team.
Minister. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for Hamilton West and Castor Dundas for her question. Our government is focused on investing in public infrastructure to create long-term economic growth and build strong, sustainable and inclusive communities. We have appointed 10 outstanding Canadians to the Board of Infrastructure Bank. These appointments will help us mobilize pension funds and institutional investors to build more public infrastructure that Canadian communities need and create jobs for the middle class. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, for months we've pushed this government to take leadership on the Rohingya issue, the greatest humanitarian crisis facing the world today. 600,000 Rohingya refugees have been forced out of Myanmar. The United Nations has determined that it is ethnic cleansing. Today, the U.S. government declared the Myanmar military operation to be ethnic cleansing. Our Foreign Affairs Minister has said this looks like ethnic cleansing. With this kind of international consensus, when is this government going to do something substantive to hold the Myanmar regime responsible for these horrendous atrocities?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
To thank the member opposite for raising this very, very grave issue. This absolutely is ethnic cleansing, and the responsibility falls squarely on Myanmar's military leadership and its civilian government. These are crimes against humanity. In Da Nang, the Prime Minister and I raised the treatment of the Rohingya directly with Aung San Suu Kyi. Our special envoy has visited Myanmar and Bangladesh to see firsthand what is happening. This is an urgent issue, and Canada is absolutely seized of it. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, a leaked Parks Canada memo alerted British Columbians that thousands of plastic feed bags escaped from an aquaculture farm and washed ashore in the Broken Group Islands. Yet, for some reason, the Sishat First Nation and other local groups were never notified. We only know about the spill due to the memo riddled with talking points and concerns about negative press, but containing no plan. Clearly, this government cares 1,000 times more about its image than protecting the environment. Will the Liberals apologize to Vancouver Islanders and finally act to create a permanent, dedicated and annual fund to help with marine debris cleanups?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can assure the member opposite that we care greatly about the environment, that we are concerned about this incident, that Parks Canada is involved in the cleanup, and that we will continue to work very hard to ensure that we protect our oceans. As you know, we have our Oceans Protections Plan. We are absolutely committed to protecting our oceans and protecting the environment.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pelin. Mr. Speaker, many Quebecers are concerned by rail safety. However, we are reassured by the hard work of the Minister of Transport, who has clearly made rail safety his absolute priority. Can the Minister present some of the measures that he's taken to strengthen rail safety in Quebec? Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, first I'd like to thank my colleague for Alfred Pelin for his excellent question and for his hard work on the Transport Committee. As you know, rail safety is my absolute priority. And let me give you a few examples. We've added security barriers on the Rue Saint-Ambroise in Montreal. We've added the same barriers in Rue Saint-Georges in Saint-Hyacinthe. We've added security barriers on to the subdivision of Drummondville. So those are just a few examples of rail safety. That is our priority.
Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
7 years ago, Lyle and Marie McCann were brutally murdered. Their family was never able to give them a proper funeral because the murderer refuses to reveal the location of their remains. Convicted murderers who re-victimize their families by withholding the whereabouts of their victims' remains should not be eligible for parole. Will the Minister of Justice do the right thing and pass legislation that will fix our broken parole system to ensure closure for families like the McCanns?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, may I welcome the honourable gentleman to the House and congratulate him upon his recent election. Secondly, let me share that all members of the House share the angst and concern that he has expressed with respect to this particular situation, and I would look forward to an opportunity to discuss with him and with the Minister of Justice any constructive ideas that he might wish to offer about how we can improve our criminal justice system.
The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Time is running out, Mr. Speaker. Within the next few days, 600 workers at the Davie shipyard will be jobless because of the federal government. Winter has arrived suddenly, and we urgently need icebreakers on the St. Lawrence River. The Navy urgently needs 2 additional supply ships to carry out their missions, including the future Obelix. Ottawa's not doing anything about this, and now it's our operational capacity that is in jeopardy. Why is the Liberal government boycotting the best shipyard in North America? And why are they making the Davie shipyard workers lose their jobs? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Mr. Speaker, these services from the Canadian Coast Guard are essential to the protection of our economy, our coastal economy, and to strengthening our economy in general. We are committed to continuing these services, and this is complementary to our program.
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of His Excellency Hashim Tachi, President of the Republic of Kosovo. L'honorable député de Rosemont.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie with the point of order. Yes, Mr. Speaker. Point of order. During the question period, the Minister of Revenue accused me of misinformation, and so I call for unanimous consent to table in the House the report of the Auditor General, the section on Revenue Canada, and because it's as if she hasn't read it. The member have the unanimous consent. So the honourable member for Montcalm has a point of order as well. Mr. Speaker, further to the point of order raised by my colleague from Joliette on November 8th, I would like to bring to your attention a few additional observations, if you would allow me, in order to contribute to people's reflection. Mr. Speaker, I also feel that the vote was marred by irregularities and that it should be conducted again. As mentioned by my colleague from Joliette, the Code of Conduct for members is part of the standing orders of the House. It clearly prohibits any elected official from acting so as to further his or her private interests. It clearly prohibits, and